our final speaker always brings a smile to my face. Because whatever difficulties you Nigerians have between yourselves, our man from South Africa, he always has a word or two to guide us through our challenges. In the knowledge that the architects of these problems, our British architects, are the same. Dr. Biki Minyuku is a patron of the Fatherland Group. He's a BA Honours graduate, University of the North, Limpopo, an MSc Economics, Personnel Management, University of Cardiff, 1979, an MBA in Management and Marketing Communications, LaSalle University, 1985, a PhD graduate in Social System Sciences, Interactive Management and Planning Systems at the Union Graduate Institute in conjunction with Interact, the Institute of Interactive Management, Cincinnati, Ohio, and Ballaghaquinney, that sounds Welsh, Pennsylvania. He's a former Chief Executive and University Registrar, a Chief Executive Officer, and Chief, well, our CAO, because I'm not sure what the CAO signifies, but Vice Chancellor of the University of the North, now the University of Limpopo. Is a former Chief Executive Officer of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of the Republic of South Africa, and in recent years, a national, continental, and international projects and programs consultant and monitor and evaluator of the USAID funded Republic of South Africa, TELP, the Zambian USAID's Department of Education's grades 4 and 5's mathematics, etc., etc. He has served as one of the Republic of South Africa's Department of Justice, I believe, ministerial commissioners to transform defense intelligence, and executive secretary of the Presidential Commission of Inquiry into the mandate and location of the Republic of South Africa's Directorate of Special Operations. Amongst others, Dr. Biki Minyuku served as the replicable gender justice in Africa colloquium proponent, organizer, coordinator, and convener in the Republic of South Africa. Please, I invite to the stage our patron from South Africa, Dr. Biki Minyuku, and share with us those wonderful insights from the South African experience. Thank you, Dr. Biki Minyuku.
My namesake, thank you. I need to know if Joe is hearing my voice.
Yes, I'm hearing you. I can hear you, Dr.
Thank you. And a hello to everybody. I would not be able to mention you by names, but I think I have been the greatest beneficiary of this conference today. I'm the one who learned quite a lot. In a way, I think you have taken me on a journey to a place that was probably just in my mind. I thank every one of yourselves. Perhaps I should start on a lighter note. When I got disconnected now in the middle of being introduced, I thought I should drink poison so that my enemies can die immediately. But I realized I'll be the one dying anyway, so I can't take poison. I'm happy to be reconnected with your good selves, and all I can do is to probably share some few nuggets from my standpoint, mindful that I am a learner in all the heavier issues that you have discussed here today. But before I share a few nuggets with you, I must say much of what was said is true, Priscilla. It was full of contradictions. For an outsider, insider like me, or an insider, outsider like myself. And those contradictions are not bad to the extent that they surfaced. They are really good because then you know what to deal with and where to go. And I think the way forward has been posited already. But I couldn't help it from South Africa because I was reminded of the person all of you might have read, Steve Biko. And he indicated that the greatest weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. And literally, I find consonance with what Tim said right at the beginning, talking about culture. And not only culture, but probably culture as the software of the mind. Something of that sort, if I had you. Tim, pardon me if I didn't hear you well. That's almost like thinking about a blank CD, and you have to write messages on it through processes of socialization and everything else. But this led us to this confusion, to these contradictions that we are talking about. I'm glad that the majority of the presenters happen to be young, as far as I could tell. Professor F. Young, you're also very young, don't worry, it's just the wisdom of the beard. And what makes me so happy is that, in fact, Tim, these are your future judicious activists to take the challenge where it should be taken. If you listen to them very carefully, passion is there. Of course, there is pain. If you listen very carefully, and I know Dr. Eke said, let's listen, and I think I was doing just that, you would know that the distortions, you would know that all the marginalization and the domination and what have you, these are lessons from the greatest oppressors of them all. And who have learned those lessons? The dictators of today have actually learned those lessons, and they are practicing them. So you really need to meet them, not halfway, perhaps not head on, but with the knowledge that you have, you could actually influence them for the better. Because a lot of life is being lost now by being confrontational. And you need to move away from that. I am speaking also as a beneficiary here. I had to dispense with protocol because I'm now a patron. My namesake, so I could dispense with protocol. But now let me go to the few nuggets that I wanted to share, and even before I share them. The theme of the conference is saying who is in and who is out. Literally, no one is out. Everyone is in. So you are the in group, all of you. And being an in group, all of you, the outsiders are literally very few in numbers compared to the in group. And that being the case, you need to know that even you said, not minorities, the so-called minorities, the nationalities that are here. And we had a good lesson that let's not be spokespersons of even these groups. We need to stand up as individuals of unconditional self-worth in order to make what our ideals a reality and what it should be. So I also wanted you to know that even in the Biafra that many people think it does not exist, you had outsider, insider people, stakeholders. Tanzania was actually, it recognized Biafra. Zambia recognized Biafra. Remember, those are the two countries that also recognize the African National Congress of South Africa. So there are ties that bind us. Now, you cannot forget your history. Having said that, one little nugget I needed to share was a lesson I learned from the young lady who had just read a poem. And I wanted Dr. Eke to understand that I wasn't going to mention it, but Dr. Eke mentioned it. I don't want to start even where he started. The greatest thing he said was to apologize. And we want the leaders to apologize for what happened as well. But what I wanted to say is that I learned from Jo. She might not want me to say it now, but I'm going to say it this way, that your good self, Timothy, and Professor Philip Effiong Jr., you do need to actually consider giving, if you have not already done so, your permission for the Fatherland Group to literally digitize all the documentation that you have in place so that that becomes a resource for all of the people of the South. Is that what you call it? You can say Biafra if you want to. There's nothing wrong in calling it Biafra as well. Now, give the Fatherland Group that permission. But what Joanne had in mind was also exactly what Dr. Eke proposed, to make sure that you remember the lives lost in Biafra. You think of erecting a memorial for that. Dr. Eke mentioned that. But I think this is what you need to realize, that what happens across the Atlantic Ocean and what happens across the Indian Ocean, knowledge cross-pollination always happens, automatically for that matter. And when you think about that memorial, don't forget to tap in what Jo actually has been thinking about from day one. I'll come back to some of the recommendations that I had. I just wanted to say that, by the way, it wasn't just a few African countries that recognized Biafra. A whole lot of countries recognized Biafra, except that the most powerful ended up supporting the enemy from within. That is your military. Now, funny enough, they should be your protectors, but they declare war against your good selves. A few little nuggets that I wanted to share is that there is nothing more important and more serious than ideas, thought out ideas whose time is now. Now, let me demonstrate what I mean by that. That we are Africans is actually a given as far as I'm concerned. But that we are African thinkers and doers is something that seems to be anathema to Africans. But here is a lesson from the Father Group. Thinkers, doers, professionals who are networking for a better tomorrow. Now, no one wants to know, except the Britons and the true Britons like Joanne, no one wants to know that you're thinkers and doers. No one really wants to know that you can do it yourself, just like Dr. Eke has done. No one needs to really even know that. But the reality is this. The reality is that the time is now for yourselves to actually even know that there is a purpose. It's relative to time. There are a number of authors who think that Africans only think in terms of the past. Our orientation as Africans is we are embodiments of the past, present, and the future. So we cannot be relegated to non-thinkers. And for that matter, people without solutions, when the solutions are within your hands. The second little nugget that I want to share with yourselves is that we all deserve a better future. And it is common knowledge that a better future is a given for everybody. What is not given is the fact that who are the custodians of the future? Who are the inheritors and custodians of the future? The youth of today are the ones who are custodians of the future. And the future is what we make, isn't it? Now, don't be surprised when you hear the youth saying that, well, if you don't have solutions, we have solutions. The reality is you need to be inclusive, including the young ideas solutions. And what they are asking for is exactly what you know. Freedom, independence is exactly what they are asking for. You didn't hear them say we want to topple the government through by all means necessary. They can actually do it if they want to. But the reality is they are actually engaging you at that level of saying that what we need is not the poison that I wanted to drink in order to make the enemies die. It's what they want in order for them to live even a better and a longer life. Now, the future belongs to them. Let's not rob them of that future. We may have children, we may have relatives, we may have what, but the younger of them all need a better legacy from us. Now, if we cannot leave it, that better legacy, then we need to create it with them. We need to bring them in our midst. They have energy, they have exuberance. They would actually run faster than I can run. I think they will just see me behind, but they can run faster than I can. So you need to know that the future is what they are requesting. Now, when you build a nation, that nation that you're building, you're inheriting it to the kids, to the future generation. Remember all that. We are a passing fade, all of us. Now, it's what we leave. It's not the food sense that we must leave. It's a legacy for the children, for the youth. Your children, our children, are the reason why we live. Now, thirdly, this is very important. That diversity is our strength. It's actually well known throughout the world. It's a given. But that, the confluence, when you start actually mixing diversity with inclusivity and equality, it will answer some of the issues that you were talking about today. That confluence is so critical because if you do not have that confluence, the issues of inequality arises and everybody feels marginalized. But the reality is that if you're inclusive, you will still celebrate the diversity. Nothing wrong in celebrating all the diversity that is in this. I thought I was in the South-South, Timothy, but now you're telling me there is the South-South somewhere in Nigeria. The diversity that is there is actually not just your strength, it is your power, potent power. And you need to celebrate that. If you don't celebrate it, then there will be contradictions that we talked about. And the idea that you should actually just talk diversity and not inclusivity and equality is anathema to the Fatherland Group. They want a balance of the three, and you need to understand that. Now, then there is this thing called the African values and the African principles. In fact, I think we have shared that with the world. They didn't have values. Civilization, as we know it, started in Africa, whether we like it or not. Some people were still eating raw meat. I know even in Ethiopia, they eat raw carcasses. That's fine. But civilization, as we know it, it actually started right here in Africa. If you look at the groups that you're talking about, they've been there for ages and ages and ages. And what are the lessons that we are learning from them? The lessons we are learning from them is that they valued life. I know Tim and some other individuals have mentioned that the Igbos didn't colonize your area. The people who colonized your area actually didn't know anything about valuing life. They decimated not only life, but also the life of plants and the environment. They still do it today. life as we know it, biologically and otherwise. But where did this principle of respect for human life start? Or maybe you want to argue that the Garden of Eden was somewhere else. That's fine. You can argue that if you want, but the lesson comes from us. Where is this value that we say we need to respect the humanity and the dignity of the next individual coming from? It actually comes from Africa. And it comes from your neck of the wood, Timothy, and Prof. Ifing. And that you were now plunged into war, you had no option. If you had an option, you'll never have been plunged into that war. And in fact, you gave an option and said we would want to govern ourselves. But who was listening? Nobody was listening. They wanted you to listen to the gun. And that's why the youngsters say that that's forced marriage. You don't need forced marriages at all. Now let's look at the other principles. Principled leadership. Where did it come from? Now, you just need to look at your history. I know one of the youngsters said, well, they've taken history out of the curriculum at school. They are even lucky if it is taken, because that was poison. You see, then it means that the curriculum developers, Prof. Ifin, need to develop new curriculum altogether. It should not be like us in South Africa. They still gave us history, but they gave us the history of Europe, not the history of our country. No one to date is writing the new curriculum, developing the new curriculum for a new South Africa. But look across Africa, it's the same thing. But we are here and there is a solution. In fact, we can literally rewrite the curriculum tomorrow if we wanted to. Just the Fatherland Group alone can do it. The Fatherland Group can even be an institute or a university, just to write curriculum for Africa at large, if we so wanted. Now, having said that, I picked a few red flags and a few barriers. I'm now coming to a close in terms of my recommendation. Now, if all of us constitute a leakage, a brain drain from our countries, then we ought to look at ourselves and say, what exactly are we doing? That's a red flag. If at all we're talking self-determination. If we say that we have unaligned strategic intents with even our nationalities, it means we are agreeing that nothing is reconcilable. I want to tell you, nothing is irreconcilable. Even the groups that are here can be reconciliated for the better. The solution is from within yourselves, your own intents to actually achieving your ideal. The other red flag I picked is these splinters, these groups, and I think Professor Ifyon has warned against this domesticated and, box mentalities that we keep ourselves in boxes in order to remain splintered from reality. It brings distraught, it brings unhappiness. It actually brings the pain that we have said it is manifested. It's high time we look for higher, better life than just pain. And then there is this fear, which is also a red flag. This fear is probably the fear of the Biafran war, but nobody is saying, let's go back to the Biafran law. I beg your pardon, war. The fear of the known, of the marginalization, of the domination by the other groups. The engagement is not there. The engagement is the one that will make you realize that we are human like any other one, unconditional human beings like any other one. So the fear of the known and the fear of the unknown need to be kicked out. The Fatherland Group, I don't think, is afraid of anything or anybody. That's why you're talking today. That's why you're having this dialogue. I know I'm being shown that I must summarize. Now, let me quickly summarize. I've already talked about one thing. I want to mention two things in summary and in conclusion. I was thoroughly impressed by all of you, including the timekeeper, because she's not compromising with any one of us, and keep on keeping on that way, because that's the fatherland way. Now, having said that, being impressed and reality are two different things. The taste of the pudding is in the eating. You have challenges ahead, but you can conquer all of them. With just sheer will, you can conquer all of them. My last nugget that I want to share with you is that I hope and trust that we will all actually be proud of ourselves, and not just be proud of ourselves, but remain faithful towards a better tomorrow. That's my parting shot.
Thank you so much. My namesake. Many of you be wondering about this namesake references that Dr. Minyuku and I use to refer to ourselves. In mutual admiration, we agreed to swap names. But you will have heard, from what you've heard, you will have seen that I ended up with the better deal as between the two of us. A truly remarkable mind. He opened by saying, quoting Steve Biko, that the greatest weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the minds of the oppressed. Do not lend them your minds. Stop lending them your minds. Take ownership. Take it back. He said that with some useful suggestions for us, that those who have records, the Timothy Modu Juniors, the Philip Effiong Juniors, let Fatherland digitalize those records. He said, let's erect a memorial for Biafra. We must never forget. He reminded us of the enemy from within. Regrettably, our military that should be protecting us, that ought to be, if they have to shoot at all, it is to be shooting non-Nigerians. But regrettably, when you check their record, almost every bullet and every bomb, the receiver has been a Nigerian. That cannot be allowed to continue. He said we all deserve a better future. That is a given, but reminded us that the custodians of that better future are the youth. And so what we're on is a legacy project. It is not the pounds, shillings, and pence, or the naira and kobo that you leave in your bank account or in your estate that will be the true legacy for your children. It will be a better country, a fairer country, a more peaceful country, a more progressive country. So all of those who are concerned about accumulating wealth, what use is that when your children cannot live in their country, travel in their country with assurance, with peace in their minds? He said, let's celebrate our diversity. We keep resenting diversity rather than embracing and celebrating it. We go further to deny it in the pretense that we're all one. But what has come through today is that we are indeed diverse, but there are commonalities. So let's celebrate the diversity. He reminded us we have to go back to the African way. And what was the African way? Valuing human life. The African way, we didn't take lives casually. Contrary to the narrative that we were always killing ourselves, it wasn't our way. I remind people, what were we killing ourselves for? Is it more mangoes that we can't eat them all, or pineapples or yams? Is it more of our beautiful women folk when we have so many? What were we killing ourselves for, according to their narrative? It wasn't our way. We valued human life. He said we must rewrite the curriculum. And Fatherland can do that, he said, not only for Nigeria, but also for Africa. And I particularly liked his points that nothing is irreconcilable if the will is there. And within Fatherland, the will is most definitely there.